So again, welcome. This is a training presentation on cloud readiness assessments using the RISC Networks platform. So that's what we're going to go through today. Again, my name is Jeremy Littlejohn. I'm one of the founders here at RISC. I'm also our chief analyst. So I'm going to be taking you through the training today. As a side note, we are recording this training. So later, if you want to listen to it again, you should get an email about being able to access it, or if you want to provide it to anyone on your team that wasn't able to join. My email is there. I also list our sales team email always on these, just in case you have questions as you get to the end of this. The sales is just the easiest way to get to our customer success team, as well as myself. You can also email me directly if you'd like. And then finally, there are multiple partners and customers on today. So if you have a specific question, feel free to reach out to me offline so that we can take care of that, get that answered for you. It's just not try not to bring anything customer specific onto the webinar. There is a questions panel as part of the GoToWebinar control panel. You can submit your questions there. I will stop periodically, as you can see there, to answer them. And typically what I'll do is answer the question if I can, and then type an answer as well. That way everyone can see it. I push that out to everyone. So, okay, with that, we will get started. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk, first of all, about use cases. Even though this is a cloud readiness specific presentation, we're going to talk just a minute about use cases. We're going to talk just a minute about intelligent application grouping, because that's a foundational piece to be able to do the analysis of the applications for cloud. Then we'll talk about analytics, so that's the cloud readiness piece, and then we'll come back and kind of revisit those use cases. So again, we're not going to spend a lot of time in here, but I do think it's worth noting that as we talk about things like cloud assessments or cloud readiness, cloud means obviously a lot of different things. It could be I'm going from an on-prem application into just a SaaS version of that application. And I need to understand how many people use the on-prem one. It might be a PaaS, it might be IaaS, there could be a lot of different flavors. It might be public cloud, it might be a private cloud transformational journey that you're on. So there's a lot of different pieces of this kind of migration or transformational play. It could also be something you're doing around DR first. So DR may be your first foray into, be it public or private cloud for that matter. And so it's important to note that the platform and the analysis that we're going to show today can be used for a lot of these different use cases. And I'll talk a little bit about them as I do it. I'll try and stay focused on cloud transformation. But, certainly if anybody has any questions as I'm going through, please don't hesitate to post them. Okay, so why do we exist then, right? Let's assume people want to do a cloud transformation. I want to take my applications, put them into cloud. Why does RISC Networks even play a role here? Can't they just do that? Well, what happened when we looked into the market, and it doesn't have to do just with cloud, as I mentioned in any of these other use cases, is that customers want to do this, we felt, but they did not have the information they needed in the format they needed it, when they needed it, so that they could make good decisions. So there was a lot of, well, let's hope, or let's just see what happens. And again, that can work on some stuff, but it doesn't work on the enterprise as a whole. So we exist to provide customers information that's actionable, that they can use to take an entire environment and begin to work it into addressable segments, so that they can understand, hey, these can go first, these go second, these go third, et cetera. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we do some of the training today. We want to be an answer engine for them, so that those answers tend to revolve around IT infrastructure, public and private cloud transformations, and then trending and analytics. And we'll talk a little bit today about some stuff we have like around security and stuff like that if we get to it. All right. So before we can talk about cloud readiness, we need to talk about what we consider to be a foundation. We need to lay a foundation because this is a problem, right? We get in, we start thinking about, well, could this app go to cloud or not? Well, all apps could go to cloud, right? What we really are asking is what's the level of effort required to take this app to cloud? And if we don't have a good, solid understanding of what makes up that app in totality, then we're not going to be able to make that choice effectively. So the first thing that we need to build in any situation is a metadata layer regarding, sorry, I guess my phone should pull that off there. How about that? Is a metadata layer regarding the IT environment. So we want to take servers and load balancers and network equipment and VMs and applications, processes that they're running. And what we need to do is actually make something useful out of this, right? Because a big collection of servers isn't something I can work with. That's not what I'm migrating. I'm migrating an application. So the first thing we want to do is help someone organize this chaos. I've got hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of components in my environment. How do these make up application stacks? So we want to go from the left-hand picture here to the right. That's the first step for us. Okay. What we want to build out of that are application stacks. So it's a 3-tier web app, right? It's an SAP cluster. Whatever it is, we're going to try and surface these application stacks that are actually providing back business services from IT. Once we've built those, now we can do some analytics, right? So just an inventory is not sufficient. Building application stacks, service discovery, not sufficient. What we really need to do now is put some analysis on that and see what is the next step. What does that transformation look like and how would it happen? So at this point, we can begin to ask different questions. As you can see today, we're going to focus on public and private cloud transformation. That's a series of questions that I might ask about these application stacks. Now, if you're wondering how we build the application stacks, how much work goes into that, or how much effort there is on that, those are great questions. We have a complete other training that we do on that particular function. And so some of those are recorded. You could get them on our partner site or on our, I believe on our YouTube channel. And if you don't see them there, obviously you can join them. And we go through the details of how we do that and how to manipulate those application stacks. But today we're going to focus on assuming the application stacks are built. Now what analysis do we want to do? Okay, so let's take what we would consider to be a prototypical customer journey for cloud transformation. This could be public or private. And we understand that this is a bit simplified, right? But let's run through these steps and think about this approach. And what you'll see is that when we look at the platform, it's actually built to mirror this approach. And so as your approach differs from this, that's great. You know, you can address the platform slightly differently. Or from a slightly different angle, and still come out, I think, with a fantastic outcome. So let's talk foundational first. As I mentioned, hey, I'm interested in cloud, or something that we get a lot is I have to be out of a data center. So I need to shut down this data center in Omaha or in Dallas or wherever it is. And I need to take what I can to cloud. My CIO said, we've got to get out of this. We've got to take what we can to cloud, to public cloud. What we can't, we need to put into another data center, consolidate. So I've actually got two streams running here, right? I've got kind of a private cloud or a data center migration on one hand, and I have a public cloud transformation on the other. I'm running them concurrently. So what I need to understand is, what do I have? And then I need to organize that by the application, because that's what I need to deal with. So I need to get to my application stacks. Now, application stacks are slightly different than applications. So a stack might host 2 or 3 apps. So we can talk about that today. But generally, what we're going to focus on are application stacks. So now that I've got my stacks built, what I need to do is start classifying those. So I'll show you some of the analytics that we do, and then I'll show you how you can do your own on top of it. We want to determine the level of effort, how easy or hard. So in our scenario here where I need to shut down a data center, I don't have time to build or rebuild 50 applications, re-architect them to be in these really nice, cool internet scale architectures, right? What I need to do is get out of this data center. And so some of this stuff I may lift and shift. Some I may lift and shift and then redo in the cloud, right? Because I have to execute this. And some of it may not be suitable for that right now at all. And so I've got to target that for another data center. So how do I classify that? How do I price it? How do I know ahead of time what is this going to cost me? Now, one of the things you'll note about our analysis is that we don't do a lot of exotic pricing. So, if you're looking to see, well, what would it cost me if it had spot instances and these types of things for AWS? It's not going to be in our platform, right? What we're going to talk to is the general enterprise application that's probably running 24/7, up there all the time, on-demand pricing. And then we're going to show that across lots of different providers so that you can have a feel for which one in the most normalized cost scenario we can provide is going to give you the best cost to value ratio. So then you need to set up that cloud. If I'm going into a public cloud, we'll use Amazon for a minute. Let's say I'm going to migrate into Amazon as part of this project. Well, I need to set up subnets. I need security groups, right? I need to understand the rules that need to exist between different security groups, all this type of information. So how do I do that? Then I need to migrate it. So here I'll talk to you a little bit about integrations that we have. We don't actually do any data moving, but we have integrations with some really good platforms that do that work. And so where appropriate, you can use those to do lift and shift migrations. And then once you're migrated in, you want to stay there and keep checking it, right? You want to track it, compare it to what it was like on premise, understand how that migration progress is going. So all of that can be done inside the RISC Networks platform. And we'll continue to look at those machines as we move through. So that's a general journey, and we're going to get into the specifics here in just a moment. What I'm going to do right now is just stop for a second and see if anyone has any questions. I'm going to make sure we don't go too fast on it. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing any, so I will keep going. Okay, so let's go look at it in the platform. All right, so this is our platform. I'm going to hide our notification up here. Thank you very much. Yes. It's just a demo assessment that we have set up, but it allows us to kind of illustrate a couple of these functions for training such as this. So again, before we can get too far down the road of analyzing for cloud, what we need to do is just understand foundationally what do we have. So our foundation module here, right, provides a picture of the assets in the customer environment. So what types of servers do I have? VMs, Linux, Unix devices, etc. And then tracking the communication of those and the performance of those to build them into application stacks. So again, we have a different training on this piece, and I'd encourage you to join that if you want to think about how we do this or have questions about this. All right, but here we want to bring in all the different things that contribute to an application stack, etc. So for the purposes, again, of this training, we're going to assume that we've done that. And what we're ready to do now is start to think about this and our applications in terms of their disposition around cloud. So I'm going to be focused primarily here in the Cloudscape module. So let's start, right? Go back to our journey and start with classification of the applications. So as I look at my applications, there's a couple of things that I want to understand. I want to understand level of effort, and I also want to understand a little bit about the risk profile of that application, and not the RISC Networks profile, but the chance or the likelihood that if something goes wrong, it may be the last mistake I make at that company, right? So how do we do some of that? Well, the first thing to do is think about which of the applications are used the most. So this is a very simplistic model here. You have internal and external applications. So the internal and external apps represent how much or how many unique IPs, source IPs, are consuming a particular application. And these are not other application stacks. These would be end users, okay? So internal means how many people internal to your environment are doing it. External means how many people outside of the environment. So internet users, typically. So as you think about disposition of portfolio, in this case, Auto Schema Dependency 01 is my number one internal and external app. Probably not a great candidate to go at right away. Okay? Not my best opportunity. I'm actually going to pull up here, I think for the sake of this, bear with me, so you can get us a slightly different data set. I'll come back to this one for some of the rest of the presentation. Okay, so in addition, what we want to look at is a classification for level of effort. So there are four, we do all of our analysis at this level with tags. So we're going to tag either a workload, or you can also tag an application stack. So you can tag an individual server, or you can tag the stack. And we'll talk about tagging the stacks in a second and why that might be useful. But let's start with workload. So there are, with the tags, there are four that we're going to do by default. The first, as you can see, people have been messing with our demo. The first is RScore. So that's rehost, re-architect, re-platform, retain, retire, etc. Okay. We're also going to tag what we call the application instance, the database instance. So that helps you deal with those application stacks that are hosting multiple apps. So you'll be able to see those applications within that application stack. And we're also going to tag what we call the tier. Okay. So those are our default tags. We're going to go through each of these in just a second, right? But the first two that I want to talk about are tier and RScore. So RScore is built today based on AWS's support for different operating systems. So I'll be clear about that from the beginning here. So I can look in here and see how are RScores distributed within my application stack. So am I looking at an application stack that's all rehostable? How about an application stack that might need to be re-architected, or that has individual components in it that need to be re-architected? That's going to change my approach on that application stack, because I have a different level of effort on it. So here I pulled up a separate data set so we can show you guys here. Right? So how much of this stack has to be replatformed versus, oh, the entire thing could be rehosted. So my level of effort is smaller. That doesn't mean you should rehost it or that that's the most ideal migration path for it, but it is the lowest level of effort. And therefore, depending on your situation, it might be an appealing path to take. All of the information around how we do that scoring, as a side note, is here in our documentation. So if you want to look for, sorry, hang on. It's actually in the glossary. Sorry, it usually takes me a second. All right, so you can come in here and understand how we're doing that scoring, right? What's a refactor, rehost, replatform, and the different types of tiers that we look for, okay? So again, those are going to get done by default within the platform, and that can help you understand which applications need to be addressed in a different workflow. Now, you may not be going to AWS. You're going to Azure, GCP, Oracle, or something. IBM. And so you may have a different set of criteria. So you don't have to just use our analysis. You can actually come up here to add intelligence and create your own scoring for these migrations, transformations. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. First, you could be searching for things. So an example that we always use is, let's say that part of your target was, I want to take anywhere where I have a SQL server, Microsoft SQL server. I'm going to Azure and I want to switch that into PaaS, right, and just do SQL. Or I'm going to AWS and I plan to use RDS. That's part of what we want to do. So I want to identify these opportunities. So I can look for SQL Server as an example here, and I can tag this guy. I can say, okay, well, this migration or R score, I'm actually going to make this R score be PaaS target, okay? So I can apply that, and now when I come back to my classification, I can see anywhere where I have this PaaS target, okay? So here we go. So it's a rehostable server. It's a WSUS. You're probably not going to migrate it, but it's a rehostable server, but it also could be PaaS, right? So now you have a choice about how you want to address that particular application stack. But you don't have to do just simple search. Search is one way to do it, okay? You can also do advanced rule sets. So this allows you to look for different combinations of factors, okay? So as an example here, I can look at a rule that's searching, as you can see here, for, sorry, I'm trying to hide this so I can move. For anything that has an application context of SQL, right? But I might also look to say that it's, let's see, Windows OS version contains 2012. Okay, let's see if we have any of that.